The sound of rain mixed with the distant echo of thunder, making the roof of the warehouse vibrate like a metal drum. Sarah Miller placed her palm on the cold hood of the truck, feeling the steel pulse beneath her skin, as if the machine had a heart refusing to die. It was almost 11 at night in Cedar Falls, Tennessee. Outside, the wind howled, announcing the storm on its way. Inside, the air smelled of burnt oil, grease, and stale coffee, blended with the expensive perfume of the guests. It was supposed to be a charity event hosted by Hayes Logistics, a night to show how generous millionaire Colton Hayes could be. There was only one problem. None of the 5 charity trucks would start. Those vehicles were meant to leave before sunrise, carrying medical equipment to the children's hospital in Memphis. Now they just sat there, dead, silent, heavy. Engineers argued, technicians blamed each other, and executives watched from a distance, glasses of champagne in hand. In the middle of it all stood Sarah, wearing an oil-stained jumpsuit and holding a borrowed toolbox. Her eyes scanned every detail with the calm precision of someone who notices what others overlook. When Colton entered, the room froze. Dark blue suit, polished shoes, smile rehearsed to perfection. A man used to being heard, not questioned. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice dripping with irony, "by sunrise, these kids will breathe easier. Or not. Depends on whether these toys decide to start." Laughter, polite, cruel, predictable. Sarah stepped forward. "If the problem's electrical, I can take a look." Colton raised an eyebrow. "You?" "Yes, sir. I worked 10 years in Detroit. I know these engines like I know my hands." Someone in the crowd whispered, "Detroit? And now fixing trucks at a gala? That's a fall from grace." Colton chuckled, amused. "Tell you what, I'll make it interesting. I'll give you $1 million if you can get all 5 running before sunrise." The room erupted in laughter. Phones came out. A spectacle was born. Sarah didn't flinch. She reached into her pocket and felt something small and familiar. Her father's rusted Allen key, the only thing she had left from the man who taught her that mechanics don't talk, they prove. "I'm not doing this for money," she said quietly. "I'm doing it because there are kids waiting for these trucks." Colton smirked. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, sweetheart. Just make sure the magic trick works." Lightning flashed through the windows, flooding the room in white light for half a second. The power flickered. Everyone stepped back. Everyone but her. Sarah opened the truck's hood. The panel blinked red. ECU lock. Service required. An error even the engineers hadn't been able to fix. She tied her hair back, took a breath, and whispered to herself, "Let's do this, Dad." From the back of the room, Colton raised his phone. "Someone record this," he said. "I want to capture the moment she realizes what a mistake this is." More laughter. Sarah ignored it. She connected the scanner, the familiar beep echoing through the air. A spark flew. The smell of burnt plastic filled the room. She didn't blink. Colton lifted his glass. "To tonight's entertainment." The laughter swelled again as she adjusted the multimeter and turned the ignition. The engine coughed, just once, then died. Silence. Then another wave of laughter. "This is going to be fun," said Colton. Sarah wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and said without looking at him, "You have no idea how fun." The dashboard blinked again, but this time a new message appeared. Key pair mismatch. 0xA9F9. An error that shouldn't even exist. The sound of thunder outside, and the quiet conviction in her eyes that this was only the beginning. The rain didn't stop. It became heavier, louder, until it swallowed every sound inside the warehouse. Sarah worked in silence, sleeves rolled up, her fingers blackened by oil. Every spark from the truck's system lit her face for a split second, a mechanic's kind of lightning. Around her, tension thickened. The engineers whispered, frustrated. The assistants avoided eye contact. Everyone waited for her to fail. "Need a miracle yet?" a man joked from the corner. Sarah didn't look up. "No, just a socket wrench." Rebecca, one of the logistics coordinators, approached, 30-something, sharp eyes, tired posture. "You shouldn't have accepted that bet," she whispered. "He's only doing this to humiliate you." Sarah's voice was calm. "I've been humiliated by better men than him." Rebecca tilted her head, curious. "Why do it then?" "Because those trucks were built to save lives, not decorate a warehouse." Rebecca hesitated, then knelt beside her, handing over the wrench. "I'll help." Sarah met her eyes for the first time that night. There was something in that look, two strangers recognizing the same fire. On the other side of the room, Ethan, one of the company's young technicians, was pretending not to watch. He leaned toward another worker and whispered, "She's crazy. That system's fried." Sarah heard it. "If it's fried," she said without looking back, "then I'll scrape the burned part and make it start again." Ethan blinked. Caught. "That's not how electronics work." "Then watch and learn." She unplugged the scanner and used a portable tester. The red light blinked fast, then turned green. "There," she murmured, "one lie less on the dashboard." Rebecca smiled. "You talk to machines?" Sarah shrugged. "Sometimes they listen better than people." For a few minutes, only the rain spoke. Colton stood near the door, glass of whiskey in hand, pretending to be bored. "How long, sweetheart? We close in 4 hours." Sarah kept working. "Then it'll take 3. He chuckled. "You sound sure." "I'm not sure. I'm committed." She climbed into the cab and turned the key again. The engine sputtered, weak, trembling, almost alive, then went silent. "Closer," she said softly. Ethan frowned. "You call that closer?" Sarah looked at him. "When you've been at the bottom, every sound of life counts." A small crowd had gathered. The millionaire's smirk was back. "Guess the magic's fading," he said. Sarah ignored him, tracing a wire with her finger. Her hand stopped on a corroded connector. "There's your villain." She cleaned it with a knife, twisted the wire back, and reconnected the clamp. Rebecca crossed her arms. "You really think that's enough?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Everything starts with contact." She turned the key again. The truck coughed once, twice. Then the engine roared, deep and steady. The entire warehouse vibrated. People gasped. Some clapped without thinking. Colton lowered his glass, expression frozen. Sarah stepped down from the cab, wiping her hands on a rag. "1," she said. 4 to go." Rebecca's smile widened. "You just scared half the engineers in this room." "Good," Sarah replied. They needed a reminder that knowing the manual doesn't mean understanding the machine. From the back, Ethan spoke, half impressed, half afraid. "That wasn't luck, was it?" "No," Sarah said. "That was Detroit." The rain began to fade. For the first time that night, the storm outside was quieter than the one inside that room. The truck's lights flickered. A small warning beep echoed from the dashboard. Communication link lost. Sarah looked at it and whispered, "Now it begins." The warehouse plunged into darkness for a few seconds. Only the flashes of lightning illuminated faces, pale, nervous, half believing. Then the red emergency lights flickered back to life, bathing the room in a crimson glow that made every shadow seem alive. "Someone start the generator!" Rebecca shouted. "I'm on it!" Ethan yelled, stumbling over a pile of tools. Sarah ran toward him. The generator sat half-hidden beneath a tarp, gas fumes hanging in the air. She lifted the cover, checked the fuel gauge, and sighed. Empty. And the air filters clogged. Ethan looked helpless. "We got another one?" "Yeah," she said, grabbing a hose. "Us." She connected the hose to a backup tank and began to pump by hand, slow and steady. The sound of liquid moving through the line was hypnotic. "Hand me a lighter," she said. Ethan blinked. "You gonna set the place on fire?" "No," she said, smirking faintly. "Just gonna remind the engine it's alive." A spark, a groan. Then the generator rumbled, coughing smoke before catching its rhythm. The red lights turned white again, bright and humming. Colton reappeared at the top of the steps, drink still in hand, that familiar smirk on his face. "Well, look at that," he said loudly. "The Detroit hero can start junk too." Laughter rolled through the crowd. Sarah didn't react. She wiped her hands on a rag and walked back to the truck. But Travis, one of the drivers, couldn't resist. "Hey, sweetheart, want me to show you what real talk feels like?" Sarah stopped, turned slowly, and looked him straight in the eye. "Talk," she said evenly, "is strength with purpose. You've got half of that." The laughter stalled, cut short by the quiet sting in her words. Rebecca whispered, "You could just ignore them." Sarah tightened a bolt, eyes still on the engine. "That's what I've done all my life. Tonight, I don't." She connected the scanner again. Lines of code danced across the screen. "Checksum invalid. Line 42, authentication lock." Ethan leaned closer. "You actually understand that?" Sarah nodded. "Enough to fix it. Without internet? Internet's luxury, instinct's survival." Colton lifted his phone, filming. "Let's see if our star still shines in the dark." Sarah looked over her shoulder. "Funny thing about darkness," she said calmly. "It makes it easier to see who really glows." He lowered the phone. The smile faded, just a little. The key clicked. The engine turned, sputtered, coughed, then caught for 2 glorious seconds before fading again. "Did it work?" Rebecca asked. Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. It's breathing, but not alive." Ethan smiled faintly. "You talk like the machines are people." "They are," she said. "They just need someone to listen." The engine stuttered and went silent again. Then a man in a beige suit, one of Colton's investors, stepped forward, face flushed with anger. "Someone get this woman out of here. She's messing with equipment worth millions. This is absurd." Sarah stood, meeting his eyes. "What's absurd is calling it an investment when it's supposed to save lives." Silence fell. Rebecca crossed her arms. "She's the only one doing something. If you don't like it, the champagne's that way." The man froze. Ethan bit back a laugh. Sarah turned back to the engine. Her hands moved fast, efficient, guided by memory and instinct. In her mind, she saw the note taped on her kitchen wall, drawn in crayon by her daughter Mia. "Mom can fix anything," she whispered. "Let's prove her right." A quick rewire, a corroded sensor cleaned. The code changed from red to orange. "Almost there," she muttered. "Now it just needs to sync the key to the control module. But that only happens through the central system." Ethan froze. "The central system's offline. We need server validation." Sarah looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. "Then we don't have time to wait," she said. "Every second we lose is one less breath in Memphis." From the shadows, Colton called out, "What's the plan now, mechanic? Pray?" Sarah took a slow breath. "No. Think." She opened her laptop, fingers flying. "You're rewriting the firmware?" Ethan gasped. "Not all of it," she said. "Just enough to trick the system into believing it's already approved." "That's insane." "That's Detroit." The code compiled. Sarah hit enter. The screen flashed green. The truck trembled once, then steadied. The engine came alive, a deep, clean growl filling the room. The laughter died. Silence, then awe. Sarah looked up at Colton. "One's breathing," she said simply. The radio crackled in the corner. Through the static came a woman's trembling voice. "This is Memphis General. Please, someone respond. We're running out of time." The voice over the radio cracked through the static. "Time's running out." The words hung heavy in the air. Everyone froze. Even the laughter died out. Sarah lifted her head, the glow from the truck's dashboard painting her face in green. "Pressure's stable, temperature normal. We've got one heart beating," she murmured. Ethan stared at the screen. "You just revived a dead system without a server, without manuals, and without help." Sarah didn't look up. "Detroit didn't give us manuals. It gave us instincts." Colton clapped slowly, the sarcasm sharp. "Wonderful. 1 down, 4 to go. Should I write the check now or later?" Rebecca ignored him, stepping closer to Sarah. "Next is the second truck, the ambulance with the brake leak." "Got spare seals?" Sarah asked. "In the B storage room, locked with Colton's badge." Sarah turned her head. "You have the key." Colton took a sip of his drink. I only open doors for people who've earned it. Sarah grabbed a flashlight. Then I'll open it myself. She walked across the warehouse, boots echoing on the metal floor. Ethan followed. You know the alarm sensors will go off, right? Better they scream than stay silent, she said. The padlock was electronic. Sarah pried off the panel, crossed 2 wires, and waited. Click. The light turned green. Ethan blinked. Did you just hotwire a lock? She shrugged. I just reminded it who pays the bills. The storage room smelled of dust and rust. She ran her fingers across the shelves until she found a small metal box. Seal set 216. Perfect. They ran back. The ambulance sat outside the loading dock, white paint gleaming under the rain. Sarah crouched beside it, flashlight in mouth, unscrewing the pressure valve. A thin hiss escaped, the unmistakable sound of air loss. Hairline crack, she said. 2 millimeters. Replace the seal and bleed the system. Rebecca knelt beside her. Need help? Hold the light. And the faith. Rebecca smiled faintly. Got both. Sarah's hands moved fast, clean precision in chaos. Ethan called out numbers from the gauge. 60 psi, 70, 80. Hold it, Sarah said, tightening the valve. He adjusted the regulator. 90, 100, 120. The hiss stopped. Silence. Then the sweet sound of steady pressure. Rebecca exhaled. It worked. Sarah wiped her hands on her jumpsuit. That's 2 breathing. Across the room, Colton watched. The smirk was gone now. He didn't clap. He didn't speak. He just looked. Emily, one of the paramedics, ran in with the radio pressed to her chest. They just called from Memphis. The hospital's last ventilator failed. If we're not there by 4, it's over. Sarah stood. Then we leave by 3. Ethan swallowed hard. We still have 3 trucks down. Then it's time to make them listen. She moved to the next vehicle. The dashboard was dead. No lights, no beeps. Main fuse is blown, she said. Someone replaced a 20 amp with a 40. Amateurs. She yanked out the melted piece, stripped a wire, reconnected it. The panel flickered. And then another red message. Fuel pump inactive. Ethan frowned. So what now? Sarah picked up a wrench and tapped the pump housing twice. A deep thunk. The sound of fuel flowing. Sometimes, she said, you just remind the machine it still matters. The engine coughed, then roared alive. 2 trucks, 1 ambulance. Rebecca looked at her watch. It's 12:28 a.m. You fixed half the fleet in under 2 hours. Sarah exhaled. And they called me an amateur. Colton stepped forward, without his drink this time. Maybe I underestimated you. She wiped her hands and met his gaze. You underestimated life, not me. The engines rumbled together, the warehouse shaking with the sound. For the first time that night, there was no laughter, only quiet respect. Ethan placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. If the network comes back online, I can validate the remaining modules. We just need time. Sarah looked out at the storm through the open doors. The rain was getting heavier again. Time, she said softly, is what we never have. That's why some of us do the impossible. She grabbed the radio, voice steady. Anyone still believes in second chances. Keep your eyes open. We're about to prove one. The convoy engines idled in rhythm, a heartbeat echoing through the night. A sudden flash of lightning. The lights flicker. The 4th truck's screen glows red. Alternator overload. The red glow from the 4th truck's screen painted the entire wall. Alternator overload. Sarah's brow tightened. That's impossible, Ethan muttered. We just replaced that module. Then the problem's not the alternator, Sarah said. It's the load. Rebecca stood near the hood, flashlight trembling in her hand. Can it explode? Sarah smirked faintly. Only if we get lucky. Then, serious again, disconnect the auxiliary relay. Now. Ethan moved fast, but his hands shook. The sound of rain grew louder, beating the warehouse roof like an angry drum. Come on, come on, Sarah murmured, rewiring the connector manually. Sparks jumped. She didn't blink. Then, silence. The panel turned yellow. Voltage dropping, Ethan said. Sarah nodded. Good, it's breathing again. Rebecca exhaled with relief. That's the third one alive. Sarah leaned against the fender, catching her breath. 3 hearts beating, 2 still in a coma. From behind, a voice broke the silence, not mocking this time, but cautious. Miss Miller. Colton was standing by the stairs, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. She looked up. You here to laugh or learn? He ignored the jab. How did you know the relay was the issue? Sarah grabbed a screwdriver and twirled it between her fingers. Machines talk, Mr. Hayes. You just have to listen before they stop trying. He stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Rebecca watched the exchange, the air suddenly different, quieter, heavier. Ethan muttered, Never thought I'd see the day when Colton Hayes listens instead of orders. Colton ignored him. He walked closer. You were in Detroit, right? Which plant? Hamtramck, she said, before they closed it. He nodded slowly. Tough years. Tough made us precise, Sarah replied. You don't get better by being comfortable. She climbed into the 4th truck, turning the key. The dashboard glowed steady green this time. Rebecca smiled. You did it. Sarah didn't respond right away. She stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. Ready to drive. For the first time that night, applause broke out. Small at first, hesitant, then louder. The engineers who had doubted her were clapping, not mockery, respect. Colton raised a hand slightly. The room quieted again. He cleared his throat. Miss Miller, I think you've proven your point. Sarah shut the door and faced him. I wasn't proving anything. I was doing what needed to be done. Ethan whispered to Rebecca. He's actually impressed. Rebecca smirked. You think he's realizing money can't fix everything? Maybe he's realizing humility can. Sarah walked back to the table, wiping her hands with a rag. Colton stepped closer. You ever thought of working for me? She looked at him, calm, unshaken. You mean under you? He hesitated. I meant with me. She smiled faintly. Same difference. Rebecca stifled a laugh. Ethan turned away to hide his grin. Colton sighed. You're impossible. Sarah picked up her Allen key. That's what makes me necessary. The rain outside softened to a drizzle. The tension in the air shifted, not gone, but transformed. People moved around the trucks with purpose now. Hope replaced mockery. Even the cold metal of the warehouse seemed warmer somehow. Rebecca leaned against the doorframe, watching Sarah check the systems. You just turned a room full of doubters into believers. Sarah shrugged. Belief doesn't fix engines. No, Rebecca said, smiling. But it starts them. For the first time that night, Sarah smiled, really smiled. A quiet one, tired but real. The radio crackled again. Memphis General here. We just lost another generator. If you can't make it by dawn... Sarah grabbed the radio. We're coming. Keep the lights on. Rebecca looked at her watch. 1:15 a.m. Sarah muttered, 2 trucks left. We finish or we fail. As she turned toward the next vehicle, a sharp snap echoed. A cable burned through and burst into flame. Rebecca screamed, Sarah! The screen flashed red, short-circuit main harness failure. The flash of fire lit the warehouse like daylight. Rebecca grabbed a fire extinguisher, spraying the flames while Ethan pulled the main switch. A cloud of white powder filled the air. When it settled, the smell of burnt plastic lingered, thick and bitter. Sarah coughed, covering her face with her sleeve. We lost the harness, she said. That's the brainstem of the truck. Ethan shook his head. We can't replace it in time. Rebecca looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. For a moment no one spoke. The warehouse, once full of noise, now felt like a tomb. Then the radio crackled again. A voice, weak, trembling, desperate. This is Memphis General. We're losing power. The NICU's running on backup batteries. We have newborns here. Please, hurry. Sarah froze. The words cut deeper than any insult could. She turned away, pretending to check her tools, but her hands were shaking. Rebecca noticed. Sarah. Sarah swallowed hard. My daughter was born premature, spent 2 weeks in a NICU just like that one. I still remember the sound of those machines. Her voice broke slightly. The beeping, the silence between beeps. No one dared speak. Colton stepped closer, the arrogance gone from his face. "You have a daughter. She's 10 now," Sarah said softly. "She drew me a note before I left tonight. Said, 'Mom can fix anything.'" She looked at the smoking truck, the fried harness, the burnt cables. "Guess she's about to find out if that's true." Ethan frowned. "We can try cannibalizing parts from the other vehicles. Mix systems." Rebecca hesitated. "That's risky." Sarah nodded. "So is doing nothing." She tore off her gloves, grabbed a knife, and began cutting through the melted wiring. Ethan helped, without being asked. They worked in silence, illuminated only by the storm outside and the dim light of a single flashlight. Colton stood still, watching, not knowing what to do for the first time in years. Rebecca whispered, "You really think this is possible?" Sarah didn't look up. Possible's just a word for people who stopped trying. Minutes turned into an hour. Sweat and smoke mixed on her skin. Every wire she stripped was a heartbeat closer to something fragile, far away. A hospital full of newborns who couldn't afford another minute lost. Finally, Sarah stepped back. "Cross-link it to the second truck system," she said. Ethan blinked. "You mean share power between two control modules? That's insane?" Sarah cut him off. "Welcome to Detroit." They connected the jumper cables. Sparks burst again. The warehouse lights flickered. Rebecca held her breath. "Now!" Sarah shouted. Ethan flipped the breaker. The engines of both trucks coughed once, then roared to life together, synchronized like twin heartbeats. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Rebecca laughed, half relief, half disbelief. "You just made two machines share a pulse," she said. Sarah smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's the only way to survive." She leaned against the hood, exhausted, grease covering her arms. The radio came alive again. "Cedar Falls? Memphis here? We just saw 2 new power signals." "Is that you?" Sarah grabbed it, voice steady. "Yeah, and we're not stopping." Ethan wiped his forehead. "That was pure madness." "Madness," Sarah said, "is what you call courage before it works." Rebecca's eyes were glossy, filled with something between pride and sorrow. She whispered, "You could have walked away, Sarah." Sarah looked at her hands, the same ones that once built cars for people who'd never know her name. "I did walk away once. It cost me too much." Colton approached, slowly, almost humbled. "You saved the line," he said, "and probably those kids." Sarah looked at him. "Not yet. We still have 1 truck down." He nodded. "Then tell me what you need." For the first time, she didn't answer with sarcasm. "People," she said. "Not employees, not donors, just people who care enough to get their hands dirty." He took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "Then let's get dirty." Ethan stared, stunned. "Did the millionaire just say that?" Rebecca smiled. "Miracles come in strange uniforms." Outside, the rain had stopped. The thunder moved away into the distance, leaving only the quiet hum of engines and the sound of resolve. Sarah reached into her pocket and found her father's rusted Allen key. She turned it slowly in her hand. "We're not fixing trucks anymore," she whispered. "We're keeping hearts beating." By 2:58 a.m., exhaustion hung in the air like smoke. The warehouse was a battlefield of wires, oil stains, and empty coffee cups. The storm had moved east, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than thunder. 4 trucks now stood alive, their engines idling low, synchronized like a metallic heartbeat. The last one, the largest, a refrigerated cargo truck meant to carry the medical supplies, was dead. No lights, no sound, nothing. Sarah stood before it, motionless. Rebecca approached, voice soft. "You've already done more than anyone thought possible." Sarah didn't answer. She just stared at the black hood, as if trying to see through it. Ethan scrolled through the diagnostics tablet. "Main systems fried, battery voltage 0, alternator shorted. You can't bridge it, the ECM's gone." Sarah whispered, "Then we'll give it a new heart." Colton frowned. "A new what?" She looked up at him. "We'll pull a control module from one of the active trucks, rewire it manually, That's suicide, Ethan said. If you pull that, you'll risk killing both systems. Sarah nodded. That's why you connect them in sequence. Life's about timing. Rebecca grabbed her arm. Sarah, you haven't stopped in 6 hours. You need to rest. Sarah smiled faintly. Machines rest when they break. I'm not broken yet. Colton took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility visible now. If something goes wrong, it already went wrong hours ago. Sarah interrupted. Now we fix it. They opened the hood. The smell of burnt circuitry hit them like a wave. Wires fused together, connectors melted. Even the casing of the ECM was charred black. Ethan muttered, "That's not repairable." Sarah stared at it. "Then we rebuild it." She walked to the workbench, grabbed a small soldering kit and a magnifying visor. Every movement was deliberate, precise. Her hands trembled slightly, from fatigue, not fear. Rebecca handed her a cup of coffee. You know, people usually call for a miracle at this point. Sarah smiled without looking up. Miracles are just science that hasn't been explained yet. The camera of someone's phone was still recording. The workers who had once mocked her now watched in silence. No one dared interrupt. Ethan read from the diagnostic screen. We need to bypass the immobilizer. It's factory locked. Sarah replied, so we make the system think it's home. How? She held up the Allen key. This little thing has opened every door in my life. Let's see if it works again. She used it to align 2 microconnectors, twisting delicately until a spark lit the edge of the board. A faint buzz. Voltage returning, Ethan said. 3 volts, 5, 9. Keep feeding it, Sarah said. We're giving it CPR. Rebecca wiped her eyes. You sound like a doctor. Sarah smiled. Mechanics and doctors. Same job, different fluids. The fans whirred softly. The truck's headlights flickered once, then went dark again. Ethan groaned. We lost it. No, Sarah whispered. It's choosing. She crossed the wires again, reversed the ground and held her breath. The system blinked. Then the deep rumble of a diesel engine filled the room, vibrating through the floor. The last truck was alive. Rebecca clapped a hand over her mouth, tears welling. Ethan dropped the tablet, laughing. She actually did it. She actually did it! Sarah leaned against the hood, eyes closed, whispering, You're welcome, Dad. Colton took a step forward, speechless. You just rebuilt a brain, he said. From ashes. Sarah looked at him. That's what you do when something you love dies. You don't bury it, you rewire it. Outside, dawn began to show, a faint orange line breaking through the clouds. Rebecca touched her shoulder. We can leave now. Sarah nodded, voice steady but full of emotion. Then let's deliver hope while it still has time. They climbed into the trucks. Engines roared in unison, headlights cutting through the misty air. Colton climbed into the lead vehicle beside her. Why me? He asked quietly. Because, Sarah said, starting the engine, you needed to remember what it feels like to earn something. The convoy rolled out of Cedar Falls, the sun beginning to rise behind them. Halfway down the empty highway, a red warning flashed on the dashboard. Engine temp critical. Sarah's expression didn't change. Of course, she muttered. The story's not over yet. The highway stretched endlessly under a sky of bruised grey. Rain clouds lingered in the distance, but the storm had finally broken, leaving the air heavy, quiet, and alive. The convoy pushed forward, engines humming like a choir of persistence. Inside the lead truck, Sarah drove with both hands gripping the wheel, her knuckles pale. The warning light, engine temp critical, still blinked red, an urgent heartbeat on the dashboard. Colton glanced at her. We should stop before it seizes. Sarah shook her head. If we stop now, the engine dies. If we keep going, it might survive long enough to finish the job. Colton frowned. That's not how machines work. Sarah's eyes stayed on the road. That's exactly how people work. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The windshield wipers beat a slow rhythm, left, right, left. Finally, Colton asked, Why does this matter so much to you? It's not your company, not your name on the trucks. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her voice came out low, almost breaking. Because I've been on the other side of the radio. He looked at her, confused. She kept her eyes on the road. When my daughter was born, the hospital's power went out. Tornado took down the main line. She was in an incubator, one of those tiny boxes that hum to keep a heart alive. We waited 9 minutes before the backup generator kicked in. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. She stopped breathing twice during those 9 minutes. Colton looked away, suddenly smaller. I didn't know, he said softly. No one does. That's the thing about stories like mine. They don't make it into the papers. The road curved through an open valley, the early light cutting through the fog. Sarah's voice softened, quieter now. My husband didn't make it through that storm. Car accident on his way to the hospital. I was too busy trying to keep my daughter alive to even go see him. Her eyes glistened. So yeah, I fix things, because sometimes fixing is all that's left. Colton swallowed hard, unable to find words. The only sound was the steady drone of the engine and the wipers sweeping away tears she refused to shed. After a long silence, he said, "And your daughter? She's okay now?" Sarah smiled faintly. 10 years old. Smartest kid I know. Thinks the world can be rebuilt with glue and love. She sounds like her mother. Sarah shook her head. She sounds like who I wish I was. The engine coughed, a dry metallic rattle that sent a shiver through the cab. Colton checked the gauge. "It's boiling." Sarah eased her foot off the gas. "Give it a minute." They pulled onto the shoulder. Steam hissed from under the hood. Colton jumped out, waving through the smoke. Coolant hoses cracked. Sarah joined him, tools already in hand. "Of course it is." She knelt, burning her fingers as she tightened the clamp with the Allen key. Colton winced. "You're burning yourself." "Pain's just the price of speed," she said through clenched teeth. He stared at her. This woman covered in oil, scarred hands shaking, face lit by the orange glow of dawn. She looked like something carved out of endurance. "Finally," he said, almost to himself, "you're not doing this for those kids anymore, are you?" She paused, then looked up at him. "No, I'm doing it for the version of me that was waiting in the dark, praying for someone like me to show up." The words hung between them, raw, human, holy. Colton didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, he didn't want to talk. He wanted to help. He grabbed a rag, held the hose steady while she tightened it. Their hands moved in sync. When the clamp finally held, steam slowed to a whisper. Sarah exhaled. "Good enough to make it there." Colton nodded. "And then what?" "Then we see if the universe still rewards stubborn people." They climbed back inside. The dashboard blinked yellow now. Temp moderate. Drive safe. Colton looked at her, almost smiling. "That's the closest thing to mercy I've seen from a machine." Sarah smirked. "Machines don't give mercy, they just give chances. And that's enough." As the truck rolled forward, the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon. The convoy moved as one, steel and soul, heading straight for Memphis. In the rearview mirror, a faint glow appeared, and blue flashing lights, police sirens growing louder. Colton frowned. "Please tell me we're not about to get pulled over." Sarah's lips curved. "Welcome to the fun part." The sirens grew louder until the blue and red lights flooded the mirrors. Sarah slowed the truck, heart pounding, the convoy stretching behind her like a lifeline on wheels. Colton groaned. "Great. Of course the law shows up now." Sarah muttered, "Maybe the universe's way of checking how bad we want this." She eased the truck onto the shoulder. The others followed, forming a crooked line on the empty Tennessee highway. 2 police cruisers stopped beside them, lights flashing against the morning fog. An officer stepped out, tall, mid-40s, with the kind of calm that hides behind routine. His badge read, Chief Daniels, Tennessee Highway Patrol. He approached slowly, hand resting on his belt. "Morning," he said, scanning the trucks. "You folks running a parade I didn't hear about?" Sarah stepped forward, wiping her hands on a rag. "No, sir. Medical transport. Headed to Memphis General. Power's failing. They need this equipment before sunrise." Daniels looked skeptical. "You got paperwork?" Colton moved up beside her, pulling out a folder. "Everything's in order. Hayes Logistics, humanitarian shipment. The officer flipped through the pages. One problem. Your route's closed. Flooding took out the bridge at mile 84. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How long to detour? She asked. Daniels sighed. At least 2 hours. Rebecca muttered, They don't have 2 hours. Sarah looked at the map taped to the dashboard, tracing a line with her finger. There's an old service road through the forest. Dirt, maybe washed out, but it connects near the county line. Ethan frowned. That path's not on GPS anymore. Sarah smirked. Neither am I. Daniels crossed his arms. That road's restricted. Dangerous terrain. If something happens, I'm responsible. Colton stepped forward. Then I'll take responsibility. Daniels shot him a look. You? Yeah, Colton said. These trucks belong to my company. My risk, my signature. Sarah glanced at him, surprised, but she didn't say anything. The officer studied him for a moment, then looked at Sarah. You think you can make it through that road? I don't think, she said. I fix. A long pause. Then Daniels sighed, shaking his head. You got guts, lady, and maybe a death wish, but I'll clear the road ahead. You'll have a patrol escort until the fork. Sarah smiled faintly. That's all we need. He nodded. Don't prove me wrong. As the officers pulled ahead, leading the way, Rebecca exhaled. You realize he just broke every rule in his book for us? Sarah adjusted her gloves. Rules are written by people who've never had to choose between protocol and a pulse. The convoy rolled forward again, slower now, engines growling as the road turned from asphalt to dirt. Trees closed in on both sides, branches brushing against the sides of the trucks like hands testing their resolve. Mud splashed against the tires, and every bump felt like a warning. Ethan's voice crackled over the radio. Rear axle on truck 3's vibrating, the road's eating the suspension. Sarah replied, Tell them to stay light on the brakes and keep steady. If one goes down, we all go down. The forest thickened. The patrol lights ahead looked like beacons in a tunnel of green and shadow. Colton stared out the window, thoughtful. You really think fate put us on this road? Sarah shook her head. No, fate gives you the map. You're the one who drives. A sudden rumble made the truck lurch. Rebecca grabbed the dash. What was that? Sarah squinted through the windshield. Bridge. Ahead of them, a narrow wooden bridge crossed a swollen creek, barely wide enough for one truck. Daniel's voice came over the radio. You'll have to go one at a time. That thing wasn't built for 18-wheelers. Colton looked nervous. That bridge looks older than your wrench. Sarah smiled. Then it's about to meet someone who believes in second chances. She shifted gears, lined up the truck, and started across. Wood groaned beneath the weight, the sound echoing like thunder. Rebecca held her breath. Colton gripped the door handle. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed, the boards splintering. Sarah didn't slow down. Never stop in the middle, she said. Not in life, not on bridges. The truck made it to the other side just as a plank snapped behind them, falling into the rushing water. They looked back. The bridge swayed but held. Daniel's voice came through the radio, half amused, half terrified. You're insane, Sarah grinned. You're welcome. One by one, the other trucks crossed, creaking but surviving. Rebecca looked at her, shaking her head. You scare the hell out of me. Sarah smiled softly. Good. Fear keeps the heart awake. Yeah, they emerged from the forest, tires hitting solid asphalt again. The sky was lighter now, dawn beginning to bloom. Ethan's voice came through. We're back on the main road. ETA 55 minutes. Sarah tightened her grip on the wheel. Then let's make it 50. The radio crackled once more. A new voice, panicked, cutting through static. Memphis General here. NICU batteries down to 15%. Please, hurry. D220 to the sun was rising over the highway, a pale orange bleeding into the mist. The convoy raced toward Memphis, engines rumbling like a chorus of defiance, but hope, like machines, has limits. Sarah's truck jolted hard as the dashboard lights flickered, red, yellow, then red again. Fuel system error. Rebecca clutched the dashboard. "We can't be out of gas. We refilled in Cedar Falls." Sarah's eyes darted over the gauges. "It's not the fuel." "It's the line." Ethan's voice came through the radio. "Pressure drop on truck 1, reading 0. Sarah cursed under her breath. "The connector's cracked. We're bleeding diesel." Colton looked at her, tense. "What do we do?" She gripped the wheel tighter. "We don't stop. We fix it while moving." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You're insane." "Good," Sarah said. "It means I'm still alive." She turned to Colton. "Take the wheel." What? Now?" Colton slid into the driver's seat, terrified, while Sarah crawled between them and the open hood hatch that separated the cab from the engine bay. The roar of the wind hit her face. She braced herself, the truck vibrating under her knees. Rebecca shouted, "Sarah, you'll fall! Then catch me with a story worth dying for." She opened the small service panel, diesel fumes filling the air. The hose was split, leaking fuel across the hot engine. One spark, and the entire truck would turn into a fireball. Sarah grabbed a strip of duct tape and a clamp from her belt. "Hold the RPM steady!" she yelled. Colton's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "This is insane!" "Welcome to purpose!" Sarah shouted back. The convoy swerved around a fallen branch. Sarah lost balance for a second. Her knee slammed against the metal frame. She bit her lip to keep from screaming. The sound of the radio filled the chaos. "Memphis General to Cedar Falls convoy. NICU power down to 10%. Please respond." Sarah shouted over the wind. "5 more minutes. We're not losing them." She tore off a piece of her sleeve, wrapped it around the hose, and fastened the clamp. Diesel sprayed across her face, cold, sharp, burning. She twisted until her hands bled. Then silence. The leak stopped. "Pressure's back!" Ethan's voice rang through the radio. "She did it!" Sarah slammed the panel shut and crawled back into the cab, collapsing into the passenger seat. Her chest heaved, her hands shaking, face streaked with oil and sweat. Colton looked at her, terrified, awed, and speechless. She grinned weakly. "Told you I fix things." Rebecca handed her a bottle of water, voice trembling. "You're completely out of your mind." Sarah sipped, then said quietly, "That's the secret. The world changes when madness finds a reason." They hit the city limits. "Welcome to Memphis," flashing past like a banner of salvation. The police escort cleared the final intersections, sirens wailing through the morning traffic. Civilians stopped and stared as 5 massive trucks roared through downtown, mud and smoke trailing behind them. Ethan's voice broke through again. "We're 4 miles out. The hospital's expecting us." Rebecca smiled through tears. "We made it." Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. The road's uphill. If one stalls, the others don't make it." As if fate were listening, a loud pop echoed from behind them. Truck 3 swerved, smoke pouring from under its hood. Ethan shouted, "Alternator's dead, I'm losing power!" Sarah grabbed the radio. "Hook your jumper to mine, we'll pull you in!" Colton's eyes widened. "You'll overload your system." Sarah's voice was calm now, almost serene. "Then it'll die, doing what it was born for." Rebecca reached over and touched her arm. "You can't save everyone." Sarah looked at her, eyes steady. "Maybe not, but I can die trying." She floored the gas pedal. The engines screamed in unison. Sparks flew from the jumper cables connecting the trucks, fire dancing across the asphalt. From the hospital rooftop, a group of doctors and nurses watched in disbelief as 5 trucks roared up the final hill. The hospital radio crackled. "Cedar Falls convoy, this is Memphis General. You're in visual range." Sarah smiled faintly. "Told you we'd make it." As they reached the final turn, her dashboard flashed one last time. "System failure imminent." Colton yelled, "Sarah!" She tightened her grip on the wheel. "Not yet!" With one last surge, the trucks rolled into the hospital lot, brakes screeching. Engines sputtered, coughed, and died one by one. They had made it. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the doors opened. Paramedics rushing out, cheering, clapping, crying. Rebecca looked at Sarah, tears streaming down her face. "You did it." Sarah smiled faintly. "No, we did." Colton stepped out, staring at the trucks like they were sacred monuments. "Every dollar I ever made feels worthless next to this," he whispered. Sarah looked toward the hospital doors where the doctors were unloading the equipment. "You can't buy meaning, Colton, you build it." Then her knees buckled. Rebecca caught her before she hit the ground. "Sarah," Sarah exhaled, whispering, "just tired." As the hospital generators flickered back to life, the first lights inside the NICU glowed, soft, steady, alive. Through the glass doors, Sarah watched as a doctor cradled a newborn, wires humming softly. The baby's tiny chest rose and fell. Sarah smiled through tears. "You're welcome, little one." Then her eyes closed, and everything went quiet. The hospital parking lot was still vibrating with the echo of the engines. Steam drifted from under the trucks, rising into the cold Memphis morning like spirits leaving their shells. Paramedics rushed between the vehicles, shouting orders, unloading crates of equipment. Through the open doors, the whine of machinery and the soft cry of newborns filled the air. Life, fragile, trembling, was returning. But Sarah lay still. Her head rested on Rebecca's lap, her face pale under the harsh floodlights. Her hands, blackened with oil, hung limp at her sides. "Sarah, hey, stay with me," Rebecca said, shaking her gently. "You did it. It's over. You can breathe now." Sarah's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. "Did we make it?" Rebecca nodded, tears running down her face. "Yeah, you made it. You saved them." Colton knelt beside her, guilt washing over him like a tide. "She needs a doctor," he shouted. A nurse ran over with a stretcher, checking Sarah's pulse. Weak, but steady. Probably exhaustion, dehydration, maybe shock. Rebecca tried to smile, brushing hair from Sarah's forehead. "Hear that? You're too stubborn to die." Sarah's lips twitched in the ghost of a grin. "Story of my life." They lifted her onto the stretcher. As the paramedics pushed her toward the emergency doors, she grabbed Rebecca's hand. "Stay with the trucks," she whispered. "They'll need someone who knows how to talk to them." Rebecca squeezed her hand tight. "You worry about breathing. I'll handle the engines." Inside, the fluorescent lights painted everything sterile and unreal. Doctors moved around her like shadows. Beeping monitors replaced the roar of diesel. For the first time that night, Sarah wasn't in control. She couldn't fix this one. She drifted in and out of consciousness. Voices blurred, faces shifted, and then silence. Not the silence of death, but of memory. She found herself standing in an empty factory floor, the ghosts of machines all around her. Sunlight cut through the dusty windows, illuminating the figure of a man. Tall, broad shoulders, a familiar calm in his posture. Her father. He turned, smiling softly. "You finally did it, kiddo." Sarah's throat tightened. "I didn't save everyone. You weren't supposed to." "Then what was the point?" she asked, tears welling. "To try anyway." He walked closer, wiping a smear of grease from her cheek like he had when she was a child. "You always thought fixing things was about perfection," he said. "It's not, it's about persistence." Sarah shook her head. "I don't know if I can keep going." "You already did. You made machines feel alive, and you reminded people that they could too." She took a deep breath, the smell of oil and metal comforting, familiar. "What happens now?" Her father smiled faintly. "Now you rest. Let the world run on what you built." She looked down at her hands, scarred, trembling, covered in oil, and whispered it was worth it. A bright light filled the space. She blinked, and the factory vanished. When she opened her eyes again, she was back in the hospital room. The machines beside her beeped softly. Rebecca sat in the chair, asleep, head resting on the bed's edge. Sarah turned her head, weak but alive. A nurse noticed and smiled. "Welcome back." Sarah's voice was rough, barely a whisper. "The babies? They're stable," the nurse said. "All of them. You made it just in time." Sarah closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. Outside, she could hear the sound of engines, the other trucks being moved, cleaned, repaired. A sound she had come to love more than anything, not noise but rhythm. Colton appeared at the doorway, hat in hand. His eyes were red. "You scared the hell out of us." Sarah smiled faintly. "Good. Fear keeps the heart awake." He walked closer, hesitating. "You saved lives today, Sarah, mine included." She looked at him, tired but kind. "Then don't waste it." He nodded, voice breaking. "I won't." She turned her gaze to the window, where the dawn was fully awake now, a clean, golden light spreading across the sky. And for the first time in years, Sarah didn't think about what needed fixing. She just listened, the hum of the world outside, the heartbeat of new beginnings. Outside the window, she saw Rebecca standing near the trucks, hand resting on the hood, whispering something Sarah couldn't hear. But she knew the machines were still alive, and somewhere inside them, so was she. 2 days later, the storm was gone. The air outside the hospital smelled of rain and asphalt, that rare scent of survival. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm and golden, spilling across Sarah's bed. She was awake now, sitting upright, a light blanket draped across her lap. Her arms were bandaged, her fingers covered in small cuts and burns. But her eyes, those same steel-blue eyes, were alive again. Rebecca sat across from her, holding a paper cup of coffee. "You look human again," she teased. Sarah smiled faintly. "I was afraid I'd start rusting." Rebecca chuckled. "You're tougher than that. Machines envy you." A knock on the door interrupted them. Colton entered, carrying a small metal box. His suit was gone, replaced by a simple flannel shirt and jeans. He looked real. He stood awkwardly for a moment, like a man who'd never had to apologize before. "I brought you something," he said, placing the box on the table. Sarah opened it. Inside was the Allen key, polished clean, its rust carefully scrubbed away. The handle gleamed in the sunlight. She stared at it, speechless. "I found it under the seat," Colton said. "Figured it belonged to you." Sarah ran her fingers over it slowly, smiling through tears. "It belonged to my father, but I guess now it belongs to the story." Colton sat beside her. "The hospital wants to name the supply wing after you." Sarah frowned. "They shouldn't. Too many people made this happen." He nodded. "That's what I told them. So we're naming it after your father instead. The Miller Wing." Her eyes widened. For the first time since that night, she couldn't speak. Rebecca whispered, "He'd be proud, you know." Sarah smiled softly. "He already was. Every time I tried." The room was quiet for a while. Only the steady beep of the monitor and the hum of the air conditioner filled the space. Two small reminders that the world was still breathing. Then Colton cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he said. "All these years I built things that moved goods, but not people. I want to change that. I want to build something that matters." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" He smiled. "A network of mobile repair units, mechanics, engineers, logistics experts, all trained to respond during crises, the second chance fleet." Rebecca's eyes widened. "That's brilliant." Colton looked at Sarah. "And I want you to lead it." Sarah laughed softly. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Dead serious. I don't work for money." "I'm not offering money," Colton said. "I'm offering purpose." Sarah looked down at the Allen key in her hand. She turned it over, the light catching its edges. She could almost hear her father's voice. "Fixing things isn't about being paid. It's about being needed." Finally, she looked up. "If we do this, it's on one condition." Colton raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "No suits, no speeches, just work." He smiled. "Deal." Rebecca leaned back, grinning. "Guess we just watched a millionaire get hired by a mechanic." Sarah smirked. About time the world got rewired. The three of them laughed quietly, the kind of laughter born not from humor, but from relief, the laughter of people who made it through something that should have broken them. Outside the window, sunlight spilled over the convoy parked in the lot. The trucks gleamed, clean and repaired, waiting for orders that hadn't yet been written. Sarah stood, her body weak but steady. She walked to the window and placed her hand against the glass, looking down at the machines that had nearly killed her and saved her. "Ready to roll again?" Rebecca asked. Sarah smiled faintly. They always are. She looked at Colton. When do we start? He met her eyes. You tell me. Sarah glanced back at the sky. Open, vast, forgiving. Then let's get to work. The camera pans down to the parking lot as Sarah walks toward the trucks. The engines come alive one by one, not roaring but humming softly, like hearts waking up. 3 months later, the world had moved on, as it always does. But in Memphis, something had changed. News outlets still replayed the footage. 5 trucks tearing through the storm at dawn, engines screaming, lights cutting across the flooded highway. The clip had gone viral, shared millions of times under one headline: The Woman Who Drove Hope. And on TV, anchors talked about her as if she were part legend, part miracle. But Sarah didn't watch any of it. She was back where she belonged, in a garage. Not the corporate kind, but one filled with noise, music, laughter, and the smell of oil and coffee. On the wall hung a faded photo of her father, a young mechanic in a dusty workshop, smiling like he knew this day would come. The second chance fleet had become real. 10 trucks spread across different states, ready to roll wherever disaster struck. Each one bore the same emblem on the side, a wrench shaped like a heartbeat. Reporters had tried to find her for interviews, book deals, sponsorships. She refused them all. Stories don't need fame to matter, she told Rebecca. They just need to keep moving. That morning she was teaching a group of new recruits, young men and women from Detroit, Atlanta, and New Orleans. Some had lost everything in storms, fires, or layoffs. All of them were looking for what she once searched for, a reason to get up again. Sarah held up a greasy carburetor and said, "First rule of fixing, don't fight the machine. Listen to it." A kid in the back raised his hand. "What if it's too broken to fix?" She smiled. "Then you fix what you can, even if it's just the hope." Laughter echoed softly through the room. Rebecca entered with her tablet. "You're trending again," she said. Sarah rolled her eyes. "For what?" "They made a documentary. Premieres tonight. The Woman Who Wouldn't Stop Driving." "Catchy," Sarah muttered. "Who came up with that?" "Apparently Colton." At the mention of his name, Sarah smirked. "Of course he did." Rebecca handed her the tablet. "He's on stage right now. You might want to see this." Sarah sighed but took it. On screen, a massive auditorium filled the frame, the Global Humanitarian Awards in Los Angeles. Colton stood at the podium in a dark suit, lights flashing around him. His voice was steady, humble. "I spent years believing success meant profit. Then one night in a storm outside Memphis, a woman reminded me that real success is measured in lives touched, not deals closed." He paused, eyes glistening. "She taught me what it means to believe in second chances. So on behalf of Hayes Logistics and the entire Second Chance fleet, this award belongs to someone else." He held up the crystal plaque, engraved with the words, "Sarah Miller, for rewiring the meaning of hope." The audience stood, applauding. Cameras flashed, but Sarah just shook her head, smiling softly. "He still talks too much," she said. Rebecca laughed. "He's trying, though." "Yeah," Sarah said. "We all are." She turned off the screen and walked outside. The afternoon sun was dipping low, painting the garage in gold. The trucks gleamed in a perfect line, each one ready for whatever came next. Colton's speech continued to echo through the live broadcast. "She didn't fix machines, she fixed us." Sarah leaned against one of the trucks, closing her eyes. The air was quiet, except for the sound of a single engine running, one she'd left idling just to hear it breathe. Rebecca joined her. "You ever going to show up at one of these events?" Sarah smirked. "Why? So they can clap for something they didn't live?" Rebecca shrugged. "Maybe to remind them that real heroes have grease on their hands." Sarah chuckled. "Nah, let them believe the myth. It's cleaner that way." The two women stood side by side, watching the sunset reflect off the hoods of the trucks. Sarah picked up her Allen key from her pocket, running her thumb over its worn handle. "Think he's right?" Rebecca asked. "That you rewired hope?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Hope doesn't need wiring, just someone stubborn enough to keep the lights on. A gentle breeze passed through the open doors, carrying the faint scent of oil and rain, the smell of purpose. In the distance, a radio beeped to life. "Second Chance Fleet, this is Houston. We've got flooding downtown. Power's out." Sarah straightened, eyes focused. Rebecca grinned. "Guess it's showtime." Sarah slipped the Allen key into her pocket. Always is. Years passed. Storms came and went. Roads cracked and were rebuilt. Engines aged, were repaired and roared back to life. But one name never faded. Sarah Miller. In the small town of Cedar Falls, where everything had begun, a new building stood on the old factory lot, the Sarah Miller Training Center. The impossible is just an engine waiting to start. The place buzzed with life. Young apprentices in overalls, laughter echoing through the halls, hands stained with oil and dreams. Every morning, they gathered beneath a mural painted on the main wall, Sarah leaning against a truck, smiling, sun behind her. Below it, in black letters, "Some people fix machines, others fix the world." Inside, Rebecca now ran the program, clipboard in hand, eyes as sharp as ever. Her grey hair was tied back, and her posture still carried that unshakable confidence she'd learned from Sarah. "All right, folks," she called out. "Who can tell me what a compressor does before you touch it?" Hands shot up across the room. "Listen first, fix second," they shouted in unison. Rebecca grinned. "Now that's the spirit." In a corner, a young woman stood quietly by a workbench, watching the others. She couldn't have been more than 18. Dark curls, bright eyes, an unmistakable intensity. Rebecca walked over. "You're new?" "Yes, Mom," the girl said. "Just started this week. What's your name?" The girl smiled shyly. Mia Miller." Rebecca froze, warmth rushing through her chest. "You, her daughter?" Mia nodded. "Mom used to tell me stories about this place. I figured it was time I saw it for myself." Rebecca smiled softly. "You've got her eyes." "Everyone says that," Mia said, "but I think I got her stubbornness too." Rebecca laughed. "Then you'll fit right in." She handed her a wrench. "Go on. Let's see if you inherited her hands too." Mia crouched beside a half-assembled engine, studying it with the same focused calm her mother once had. After a few minutes, she turned the bolt with perfect precision, then looked up. "It's not about strength," she said. "It's about timing." Rebecca nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "Yeah, she used to say that too." The afternoon sun poured through the open garage doors, lighting the dust in the air like gold. Outside, rows of trucks waited, part of the ever-growing Second Chance Fleet, now operating in nearly every state. On each one, the same symbol gleamed, the wrench shaped like a heartbeat. And across the nation, people who had once been saved by those convoys sent letters, photos, and handwritten notes. One hung near the entrance, framed and protected under glass. It read, "To the people who keep the world turning, thank you for showing us that heroes wear grease." Rebecca walked out into the courtyard, where the trucks were lined up for departure. She touched the hood of the first one, whispering softly, "Keep her proud." The engines started one by one, deep, steady, alive. Mia stood beside her, eyes wide, heart pounding. Rebecca looked at her and said, "You know, your mum used to say that every engine has a soul. You just have to listen long enough to hear it." Mia smiled. "Then maybe that's what I'll do. Listen." The engines roared in unison, the sound echoing through the valley like thunder made of purpose. Rebecca tilted her head toward the sky. She'd like that. As the trucks rolled out of Cedar Falls, the morning sun caught the chrome letters on their sides, Second Chance Fleet, gleaming like a promise that never dies. Inside the main hall, the old Allen key still hung on the wall, beneath a small bronze plaque. "Property of Sarah Miller, used to start the world." In the distance, as the trucks disappeared down the highway, Mia whispered, "See you on the road, Mom." And somewhere, in the hum of the engines, in the rhythm of the road, it almost sounded like Sarah answered. Years later, the morning sun rose over Cedar Falls, painting the old factory town in gold. The roads that once trembled with storms now shimmered with calm, a quiet kind of victory. Inside the Sarah Miller Training Center, the day had just begun. Engines rumbled, laughter echoed, and somewhere in the back, a new student cursed under her breath at a stubborn bolt. A sound that, in this place, was almost sacred. Mia walked through the main hallway, clipboard in hand, her hair tied up just like her mother used to wear it. Every few steps, she paused to greet a student, or tighten a loose screw on the handrail. She moved with the same grace and certainty Sarah once had, as if purpose itself was inherited. Rebecca watched from the doorway, older now, slower, but with that same fire in her eyes. She smiled quietly. The world kept turning, and Sarah's rhythm still lived in every heartbeat of this place. On the wall beside her, sunlight hit the framed Allen key. It gleamed faintly, like it still carried a spark from all those nights long ago. Beneath it, the inscription read, "If it still breathes, it's not too late." Mia stopped in front of it, fingertips grazing the glass. She whispered, "I kept your promise, Mum." Rebecca joined her side. "She'd be proud." Mia smiled softly. "She already is." Outside, a gentle wind rolled through the open bay doors. Rows of trucks waited, their engines humming low, ready for their next call. The second chance fleet had grown beyond anyone's dream. Hundreds of volunteers, thousands of repairs, countless lives saved. But here, it still felt small, personal, home. Mia walked toward the garage doors, her boots echoing against the floor. She turned back to Rebecca. "You coming?" Rebecca chuckled. "Thought you'd never ask." They climbed into one of the trucks, side by side, the same way Sarah once had with Rebecca and Colton. The keys turned, engines roared, and for a brief second it felt like time folded in on itself, as if Sarah were right there with them, guiding their hands. As the truck rolled out of the garage, sunlight poured through the windshield, filling the cabin with light. The road stretched ahead, long and endless, but it didn't feel daunting anymore. It felt alive. Rebecca glanced at Mia. "Ever think about how far this all came? From one night in the rain to this?" Mia smiled. "I think about it every time I start an engine, every time something broken decides to live again." Rebecca nodded slowly. "That's the thing about people like your mom. They don't really leave. They just change form." Mia looked out at the horizon. "Yeah. Maybe that's what fixing means, keeping what matters alive no matter what it becomes." The truck picked up speed, tires humming against the asphalt. In the distance, the highway opened wide, the same one her mother once drove, chasing a miracle through the storm. The camera rose slowly, following the truck as it merged onto the open road. Engines thundered. The symbol on the side, the wrench-shaped heartbeat, glinted beneath the morning sun. A voice, Sarah's voice, echoed softly, like memory made wind. "You don't fix the world by saving everything. You fix it by refusing to stop trying." The horizon swallowed the truck as the screen faded to white. Then in silence, the words appeared, "Marked Destinations." Some stories aren't written, they're built.